Okay, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Just one more sound check. Rabbi Rosenzweig, just thumbs up, you could hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Welcome to our second session with Rabbi Yoni Rosenzweig on Halacha and mental health. This class is generously sponsored by Tali and Avi Tesler in memory of Dr. Eli Simon. We had a chance to hear about him from his brother last week. I see that there were some other members of the family who were on. Ricky, I guess, is a relative. You could say hello if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Eli's wife, widow.
Oh, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Unfortunately, last week I wasn't able to be on, but I heard the shiur afterwards.
Wonderful.
So I really appreciate this. Thank you to Avi and Tali, and thank you to Rabbi Rosenzweig. And I know that Eli would have really appreciated the shiur that you gave last week. He was he was a neurologist, but he was very concerned also with psychiatry and mental health. He was interested in it, and he sort of talked about it a lot, and certainly in how it intersected with Torah and with how to deal with life in the Torah world. So I think this is like very fitting to him.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really appreciate it. And one other just word of mention. You had mentioned, Rabbi Rosenzweig, that you were a Talmid of Rav Rabinovich, and we have another connection there because the Rav of our Kehillah, Rav Eli Reif, was also very close with him, and Eli and Eli became very close during the time of his sickness, his illness. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know Eli Reif very well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that Rabbi Rosenzweig and Rabbi Reif are Rav Rabinovich's best Facebook representatives.
Right.
They represent his views and his derech, halimud, and psak very well.
Right.
Ricky, it's so wonderful that you've joined us. Thank you. It's really special.
Thank you.
And Avi, I see Avi's here. Thank you, Avi, for joining and for sponsoring. And we're recording this one too. And anyone who wants to record it, please let me know. So we're very happy to welcome back Rabbi Rosenzweig for the second session. This is called Synagogue Policies and Mental Health Challenges. Just again, briefly, Rabbi Rosenzweig is the rabbi of Netzach Menashe community in Beit Shemesh. He most recently published 3 volumes of Tshuvot called Yishrei Lev, and a book of Sichot Baruch, Conversations in Essence, which engages in imaginary dialogue with great Jewish thinkers from the past. I'm happy to see that others are picking up on this trend, and I see that Rabbi Rosenzweig is doing an 11-part series on halacha and mental health with the web yeshiva. So we beat everyone to the punch, and if anyone after these 3 is eager for more, you can log on to the web yeshiva. Is that right? 11 sessions?
You're correct, but actually, right now, about an hour before I'm starting this year, I finished the series.
Oh, you finished the series. Okay.
But you can still, it's all recorded. You can definitely listen to it.
Wow. Okay, great. That's good to know as well. Okay. So without further ado, we'll sort of run this the same way we did last week. If anyone has any comments, please feel free to share them in the chat. And if anyone, or questions, and we'll also leave room for questions at the end. If there are clarification questions, maybe we'll take those in the middle, but we're going to ask Rabbi Rosenzweig to do his presentation, and then we'll go for questions at the end. I'm going to stop sharing this graphic. Do you have, and I'll make you a co-host, Rabbi Rosenzweig, in case you have anything that you want to share on the screen. So you're now a co-host, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said also last time, thank you very much. And I obviously did not know Dr. Eli Simon. I didn't even realize that he lives here in Modi'in, in Rav Reif's community. I didn't realize that at all. He lived here, and the things that were said about him last time, and I'm I'm sure he was a very fine man, and I'm very happy that we could at least do this series of shiurim lezichro. Unfortunately, with a lot of fine people, including my Rosh Hashiva, who passed away during Corona times, with a lot of these individuals, we can't give them the proper cover that they deserve. But this, like a series of shiurim and Torah learning, is definitely a worthwhile way to commemorate anyone's zecher. So yes, we'll get right into our topic. Rabbi Gelman asked me if I have any sources to share this time. Like last time, I told him that it's a little bit hard to share sources about a topic that I'm basically kind of writing from scratch. That's kind of like part of the challenge, is that with this topic, it's been very difficult to find source material. Nevertheless, I did manage to put together a few things that I think we can focus our discussion around. So let me start off with just a few of the kind of like the questions, and then we'll look at the sources, and we'll come back to the questions and answer them. So I think the kind of things that we're talking about, I mean, there are definitely a lot of things, like I always say, that you can discuss in terms of mental health. And specifically in the shul, there are a lot of things that come up. But one of the main tensions that can come up as a result is the inclusion of individuals who are going through mental health challenges within a shul framework. Because on the one hand, right, it's like, I'll tell you a story, right, that you all know, and then I'll just point out a little something about the story, and then you'll understand immediately what the question is. Okay, because we're all coming up very soon after Tisha B'Av. We'll come up on the high holy days, right? And we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I think we all remember that story, famous story, Hasidic story from the Baal Shem Tov, about a young boy that walks into shul in the middle of davening, and he doesn't know how to daven. So he starts whistling, and then everybody shushes him, right, and says, it's davening right now. And the Baal Shem Tov says, no, his whistling is, in a sense, more chashuv, more important, more pure, than a lot of our davening. And, you should let him whistle, because that whistling, that's the way he knows, how to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a beautiful story, and I think everybody knows it. But as I once heard Rav Yuval Sherlow mention, the one problem with the story is, we're the shushers, right? Like if a kid walked into our shul and started whistling, we wouldn't go for that. We would be like, shut up. we're in the middle of davening, yeah? So, we love the story as a story. We don't want our shuls infringed upon by individuals who don't know how to daven, So that's the problem, right? Is that, we're kind of the people shushing. And the shul, the way we have it today, is not really made for chaos. It's not really made for kind of like everybody doing their own thing. If someone's doing their own thing, it's usually an infringement of other people's doing their thing. And therefore, you try to create a certain kind of unity in shul where everyone is indeed following a certain program, and we're all following it together. As a result of that, you can also have like a stronger presence, in terms of like everyone's singing together, everyone's saying the same thing. There's a certain power to it, certain strength to it, which we definitely try to achieve and see as valuable from our perspective. So you understand that to incorporate in that sort of framework, someone with, say, ADHD is going to be sometimes problematic and challenging, right? Because he has ADHD. He can't sit still necessarily and do all the things that we do. It's not as simple for him. So maybe we should allow him to do other things. But how should we allow him to do other things? In what way can we do it that it won't infringe upon the shul? Or someone with Alzheimer's, dementia, right? Who won't always act exactly as he or she should in shul. Might forget certain things, certain rules of decorum. And once again, do we try to incorporate individuals in that situation in shul, in davening? Or do we say, look, we can't have this. We can't have people coming in, shouting, screaming, walking up to people, talking loudly in shul, while everyone's trying to daven, that sort of thing. It won't work. It won't work, right? So once again, I'm sure that when you hear these questions, on the one hand, like me, I'm sure you all want to say, we have to accommodate them somehow, right? There must be some way, et cetera. And sure, I'm not saying that that's not a valuable thing to think and want. And on the other hand, I also think that intuitively, we understand that there's a limit. There's a limit to everything, and that there will be nothing left from shul eventually if we don't find the correct limits, the correct red lines that help us to properly put things in perspective. So that's what I would say, kind of like as an opening to understand what we're talking about today, to understand how shul participation and mental health can be, can work together in a way that is complementary. And what do we do when the individual, right, when there's a worry that the individual needs of one person might infringe upon the kedusha, the holiness, and the needs of the shul as a whole? What takes precedence, the individual and his needs, or the community and their needs? So with all that in mind, let's take a look at some sources. I'm going to share my screen. The sources are in Hebrew. Of course, I will translate everything, so don't worry about that. And we're going to see three sources over here. The first one is a tshuva of the Chatam Sofer, okay, or Moshe Sofer from Pressburg, as I'm sure you know. And here is what the Chatam Sofer says. Odot shliach tzibur. I'm going to highlight the part that I'm reading. Odot shliach tzibur v'shochet mumche zaken v'ragil v'chol midot shemanu chazal v'koro arev b'neim zmirot. Regarding a shliach tzibur, right, a chazan that we have in the community, and he is a shochet as well, and he's an old man, and he has all the good midos that Chazal always talk about. He has a nice voice, etc., etc. We want him to daven. However, lefrakim nichpa rachmana litzlan b'chol hanofel. There are times when he's a nichpa. A nichpa is basically the word that the rabbis used for someone with epilepsy. In the old days, they thought that epilepsy was a mental issue. Today, we know that it's not. But this individual had epilepsy. Verov pe'amim beveit hakneset. Many times it happens in shul that he suffers an epileptic seizure. כי שפטו הרופאים שבא לו מחולשת ליבו דלא טעים מידי בית ספרא ואז גורם רעשה ורעדה בכל הקהילה. The doctors say that the reason this person has an epileptic seizure has to do with the fact that he hasn't eaten. And people usually go to shul, they haven't eaten yet in the morning. They come to Shachris, they haven't eaten all night either. And then they have a seizure. And this causes a whole ruckus in the community. Meaning the rabbi who's asking me, the Chatam Sofer, this question, also saw this. And as a result of this seizure, also he was incapacitated the entire day. So that's the case, right? The case is we have a chazan here. He has epileptic seizures in shul. Okay, that's the case. What's the question? Now I'm reading the question. V'zot shenit, that's in two questions. I'm reading the second one. Can we nominate this individual as a shliach tzibur on the Yamim Noraim, on the high holy days? Because on the one hand, he's epileptic. It's a problem. And if this happens to him as he's standing as a shliach tzibur, that's a bizayon. It's degrading for the shul, for the tzibur, for the davening. Maybe even if he's not a chazan, even if he's just a regular guy davening in the shul, maybe we should just tell him not to come to shul. Because of the people who are, like weak of heart, or the young kids. They won't be able to handle the sight. Maybe we should tell him not to come to shul. We don't want little kids seeing this sort of behavior, this sort of thing happening to someone having an epileptic seizure, or people who are, just a bit sensitive souls, that they can't handle this. So therefore, that's the question, right? We have the case of a person who's a chazan, he has epilepsy. We don't know, should we let him be a chazan? Should we not let him be a chazan? Should we even let him come to shul? He's causing a bit of a ruckus when he just like suddenly faints or has a seizure. What do we do with that? Should we care for the community's needs in this situation? enough for his needs. So, what does Rav Moshe Sofer answer? So he answers the two parts to the answer. Here's the first part. Okay, the first part is this. Ach yafeh katav ma'alato. What you wrote to me, I agree with. Im en lo zman v'idan. If it's not clear when he's going to have a seizure, ve'efshar she'ipol be'edabro lifnei melech basar v'dam, and this could happen as he's speaking before a flesh and blood king. Kol sheken lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Then of course before hakadosh baruch hu, lo na'eh v'lo ya'eh, it's not proper. So therefore, supposedly, we should tell him not to be a chaza. Acharei harofim shaftu shechalishuto shel ze libarei kana garma lo. But on the other hand, the doctors said that the problem is that he doesn't eat. אם כן, בראש השנה טרם הליכתו לבית הכנסת שהוא קודם אור היום, יטעם ואפילו יאכל ויהיה חזק ליבו ויתפלל. So maybe what we should do is we should tell him on Rosh Hashanah. I know people usually don't eat before davening, but for you, that you don't have a seizure, definitely you should eat before davening. Eat before davening, it's fine, go ahead, and you go to shul. And then if the doctors say that will solve the entire problem, what's the issue? Okay, so Rosh Hashanah, we've solved the issue. Great, but we all know what's coming. ביום הכיפורים, יום הצום והנורא, לא אוכל להתיר ולהתפלל מוסף כדינו. אך יחליפו תפילתו לתפילת כל נדרי ויעמוד אחר תחתיו למוסף. Yom Kippur, he can't eat. So therefore, I can't allow that he should daven Musaf. What they should do is, he should daven Kol Nidrei, right after the Sudam of Seket. So he has a full stomach, it's all good. He should switch, he should do Kol Nidrei. The Chazan for Kol Nidrei should do Musaf, and then we're fine. And now look what he says. This may be the most important part from our purposes of the tshuva. I'm emphasizing it. V'tov lo sheyamod b'yom ha'kippurim b'cheder hasamuch leveit hakneset. What's best is that on Yom Kippur, he shouldn't be in the shul. Best to have him in a room next to the shul, where he can hear the davening from. V'yitpalel sham im hatzibur. There he should daven with the tzibur. V'lo yeh chas v'shalom lemichshol, so that it's not a michshol. It's not some sort of obstacle. Lerabat am, for the people in the shul. Im chalila ye'era lo, if God forbid such a thing should happen to him. V'lu'umat zeh, and of course I pray, Hashem yechazkeu v'yamtzeu v'lo ye'era lo michshol kal yirapeu v'yachlemeu. Hashem should send him refuah. He should be better, God willing, etc., etc., etc. So the Chatam Sofer in this tshuva, right, which is the first tshuva that I could find to deal with this sort of dilemma, right, between the individual and the community, tries to first find a way to solve the issue with no one giving up what they want, what they need to give up, right? So the community is okay, the guy with the seizures is okay, everyone's fine, we can work it out, we can find a solution that is pshara, right? That is, that gives us some form of compromise, with everybody, and then everyone's hopefully happy, or as happy as they can be. And we don't have to, send them out of shul. But on Yom Kippur, when this is not an option anymore, it seems that the preferred solution, as far as the Chatam Sofer is concerned, is that he should stand in a place where he can daven, but not in shul, outside of shul, and then there's no michshol, there's no obstacle over here in the face of the public, the tzibor, right? They don't have to kind of like have a situation where this guy comes to shul every day and has seizures all the time. So once again, if he eats, I guess, at least, I don't know if that's really true today, but in those days, that's what they thought. So if he eats, should be fine. But if he doesn't eat, right, Yom Kippur, then, we can't, it seems like Chatam Sofer saying, we can't really take a chance over here. Now notice he still wants him to daven with a tzibor. So he does say, oh, we have a room next. What would happen if there was no room next to the shul? I don't know what the Chatam Sofer would say. He might say, well, then he has to daven in the shul. Maybe he would say that. The only reason that he's able to, once again, he finds kind of a compromise. He says, you can daven in the room next to the shul. You can hear from there. It's fine. I guess that's how the shuls were built. So he knew that there was a room. So great. But what if there was no room? I mean, my shul, for example, doesn't have such a room, that I could say that, that a person could have in that room next to. So what would we do in that situation? The Chatam Sofer does not say what he would do in that situation. So we can't know. That's what we do know what he does say. Okay, so we've seen that. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a different kind of question. And in this different kind of question, He excuse me. He relates to our predicament kind of as well. Okay, let's see what he asks. One of the first tshuvas that appeared in print by Rav Moshe, so relatively famous. He says like this: "Hine b'dvar hasuma asher limdu lekelev leholicho v'muchach kelev liot tamid etzlo," regarding a blind person who has a seeing eye dog. Yeah, so the dog leads him around. All good. אם יכול להיכנס לבית הכנסת להתפלל בציבור ולשמוע קדיש וקדושה וקריאת התורה וקריאת המגילה וכדומה, אף שהכלב מוכרח להיכנס עמו. So what do we do in this situation? Can this individual go to shul, bring the dog with him into shul, come into shul and have the dog with him? Or is it, or, I'm continuing the sentence, or sheyesh baze bizayon, or is it degrading to the shul? להכניס בעל חיים לבית הכנסת שהוא מקדש מעט, to have an animal in the shul, which is a mikdash me'at, to have an animal in the shul, and to do that, I mean, is that kavodik? Is that respectful towards the shul? On the face of it, it isn't. So how could you allow such a thing? Can you or can't you allow Rav Moshe Feinstein with us to come in with a seeing eye dog? Yes or no? So I skipped the main source that Rav Moshe Feinstein brings here. He brings a source from the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, where it says there, it mentions that one of the Tanaim, Amoraim, I think it was Rav Huna, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, or Rav Chista, I don't remember exactly, who would bring a donkey into the Beit Knesset, into the shul, with him, because he needed it. Okay, not because he was blind, for some other reason, but he used to bring in the donkey into the shul with him. So Rav Moshe Feinstein learns from this that there is no significant problem to bring an animal in if there is a specific need, of course. If it's a shatat chak, a specific need, then you can do it. And so he writes the following, in the part that I've emphasized. ולכן, כיוון שבהכנסת חמור חזינן שלא גרע מאכילה ושתייה ושינה. Since in bringing a donkey into the Beit Knesset, we see it's not worse than sleeping or eating or drinking in the shul, which also under certain circumstances were allowed. We can allow this in our shuls because what's called al tnaihin asuyot. This is a long sugya that I can't go into right now, but basically it means that we have accepted when we build shuls, we accept the fact that they may be used for a myriad of reasons. It's not just for davening. Since that is kind of like a standing condition with regards to shuls, therefore we can allow ourselves to eat, drink, sometimes even sleep, depending on the situation. So therefore we can also allow to bring in this donkey. Says the Rav Moshe Feinstein, what's the difference between a dog and a donkey? Is there like sort of deen and a donkey, the dafka that's allowed? Obviously not. Yeah. So dog, a donkey, any other. If there is a sha'at chak, a specific reason, we can allow you to bring in this animal into the shul. Okay. But is it a sha'at chak? Here is what's important for me for you to see. Okay? Look at this next part. Says Rav Moshe Feinstein, Ve'ein lanu sh'at hadchak gadol mizeh. This is the classic sh'at hadchak. This situation, classic need. Sheim lo natirenu, if we don't allow him to come in with the dog, itbatel kol yamav mitfila betzibur v'kriyat haTorah v'kriyat hamegillah betzibur. Then it'll be canceled for him. Davening will be canceled forever for him. Tefillah betzibur, that is, right? You won't be able to come to the shul. You won't be able to daven with the community. You won't be able to hear kriyat Torah, kriyat Megillah. V'gam, and also, yesh yamim, there are some days, sha'ogmat nefesh gdola meod, where it's very, very hurtful and sad and difficult for a person not to be in shul. Kegon biyamim noraim, for instance, the yamim noraim. That many people come together. Therefore, this is a proof. We can allow the hasuma for this blind individual who needs the seeing eye dog. Of course, you can come into shul and you can hear the kriyat Torah and so forth and so forth. Achtov, notice the ending, but it is good, a good idea. what's best is that he sits near the entrance, so that he doesn't sit like smack in the middle of shul where everyone can see when something happens, but sit on the side, sit in the back, sit somewhere, near the entrance, so that, if something happens, it doesn't have to bother the community. Yeah. Something with the dog or whatever, right? If he needs to do something, you don't have to walk with the dog all the way through shul, etc. You can just park yourself at the beginning, and that's fine. So we see here, I would say, a tshuva very similar to the Chatam Sofer in the sense that Rav Moshe Feinstein understands the issue of the kavod of the shul and the kavod of the tzibur, but he sees this as a sh'at hadchak for the individual. The individual is in a situation where if we don't give a heter, then what will happen? He won't be able to ever have tefillah b'tzibur, kriyat Torah, kriyat Megillah. So to doom him to such a fate is a great sh'at hadchak, it's a significant need. And therefore that need is paramount in our kind of like, let's call it a list of not perspectives, priorities. That's the word I was looking for. In our list of priorities, okay? It's paramount. And so we need to give him a situation where now notice that he allows him to go into the shul. He doesn't say be in a room outside the shul or be next to the window. He allows him to go into the shul with the dog, yes, and sit, but sit in the back, make sure that you're not bothering anybody, etc., that sort of thing. So I see in Rav Moshe Feinstein a continuation of the line that the Chatam Sofer began. Okay. However, despite this heter of Rav Moshe Feinstein, there are others who didn't agree. Specifically, Rav Mordechai Yaakov Breish, the Chalkat Yaakov, posek from France, who saw Rav Moshe Feinstein's tshuva and didn't like it, didn't appreciate it. And he says, I'm reading from source 3 over here. At the beginning, he says, it's a very strange thing to say to Paskin. To build such a tower, a halachic tower on such a source, I don't agree that you could just base it on the Yerushalmi in this way. And of course, he goes into the Yerushalmi, and I skipped all the back and forth, the halachic back and forth. We don't have time for that. But I skipped to the end, okay? And then at the end, he says, in this part, which I'm not going to read, he says, who has dogs? Like all the rich and fancy people have dogs. It's like it's not right. That we should all let these people with dogs into the shul. It seems like you're letting like these rich fancy people just do whatever they want. Why don't you roll in your golf cart while you're at it? Etc. into the shul. It's that kind of thing. That's how he sees it. Yeah. So therefore, he says that's not the derech of the Yehadut. It's not the derech. It's not right. It gives the wrong message, right? You might say, okay, but everyone knows this guy's blind. So what's the big deal? So he says it's a big deal. Why a big deal? Now I'm going to read the next part. He says, "Ba'avonotenu harabim." To understand, our situation is dire. Sheyadut kach nitrofefa. Judaism is in a tight spot today. Right? We're like teetering on the edge between tradition and secularism. If we even let a little bit, if we even falter one tiny bit, we open up a little bit of a crack, in the wall of our tradition. It won't end. Some rabbi will see this, and then what do we do? He'll learn from Moshe Feinstein's tshuva that it's okay to bring a dog into shul, and then rabbi, and then he as a rabbi will already he'll expand it. He'll say, "Oh, tzorach gadol is okay. I know what a tzorach gadol is. I can expand it to other cases of tzorach gadol." There could be a big desecration of God's name as a result. The Christians would never allow such a thing. But in shuls, it's okay. You see what people will say? The Christians, they care about their houses of prayer, their churches, etc. But the Jews, they don't care. They're like the dogs in, whatever. That's the thing that people will say. ובעוונותינו הרבים לא די שאין לנו כוח לגדור גדר, נפרוץ בעצמנו גדר הגדור. מישהו מיראה הוראה צריך להתבונן כמה החיול נותן עליו בהוראה כזו. He said, not only are we not keeping some of the things that our forefathers and our rabbis have said, now we're also going to open up another petach, another opening. Nah. If you really care about halacha and you care about Judaism, you would never do that. Okay, so that's one side. Wait, but what's all this connected with our topics? Now look over here. Uleidach gisa. But another point. מה שכתב באגרות משה, שאם לא נתירנו יתבטל כל ימיו מתפילה בציבור וקריאת התורה וקריאת המגילה, regarding Moshe Feinstein's claim that otherwise when will we daven b'tzibur, when will we hear the Torah? Says on that the Chalkat Yaakov, kashe le'amin, it's hard for me to believe שלא יהיה לו איזו עצה שמישהו יוליכנו לבית הכנסת. ועל כל פנים לעתים מיוחדים. It's hard for me to believe that this person can't find someone to walk with him to shul. He doesn't take the dog, a son, a daughter, a friend, even hire someone. Litim yuchadim, special circumstances. They could hire someone. He'll never go. Moshe Feinstein makes it sound like this guy will never go. Well, he'll never go. He'll find some other way to do it. Or even if he can't find always, so once in a while he'll find someone to do it. There's no reason why not. But he says, Im be'emet ken, she'en lo shum etzah acheret. It will tell me no. There is no other Eitzah. So, what will Chalkat Yaakov say now? He says, he says, okay, so what can he do? The Torah has exempted him from going to shul. Notice that he doesn't allow him to go to shul. Even if there's no other choice. He still can't go. He can't go. He can't take the dog. והדברים עתיקים, מכל מקום מצינו גם מאמר חז"ל חישב לעשות מצווה ונאנס ולא עשאה, מעלה עליו כתוב כאילו עשאה. Meaning we also have a, Ma'amar Chazal that says if a person wants to do a mitzvah but doesn't get to do it, Hashem considers it as if he did it. So don't worry. Hashem yitbarach yodea machshavot adam. Hashem knows your good thoughts and your good feelings, and he knows you want to come, and that's enough for him. V'ikar etzli, the main thing for me is shal kol panim leitim miyuchadim. Mistam hayimatzeh lemishu lo lichol levet hakneset. Certainly sometimes you'll be able to find someone to bring him to shul. We won't allow, as a result, to bring in a dog into the shul. So we see here in the Chalkat Yaakov the opposite of what we saw in Moshe Feinstein, the Chatam Sofer. To him, the considerations of the community, right? He says we're on the brink of something, right? The community is teetering between this and that. And who knows what will happen? Slippery slope. You allow this, et cetera, et cetera. Those communities, those priorities seem more important to the Chalkat Yaakov than the Sh'atat Chak of this specific individual. Now you could say, of course, that maybe Rav Moshe Feinstein agrees with that, and just he didn't think that there was such a big issue, with the communal norms, etc. That could be. It could be. I can't prove otherwise. But either way, I think that at the time when this was written, Rav Moshe Feinstein wrote his tshuva. It was Tafshin Yud Gimel. So that's 1953. I don't think that the situation in America was so great, or better than France in terms of, Yiddishkeit, et cetera, et cetera. I think that you could probably have said the same thing about American Jewry at that point that the Chalkat Yaakov says over here. Either way, the point is that they definitely emphasize different things in terms of what takes precedence, the needs of this specific individual or otherwise. Of course, they both try to find ways to reconcile both. Even the Chalkat Yaakov says, I'm sure we can find someone to take him, right? And that's part of his tshuva. That's part of the point of his tshuva, is that he believes that another solution can be found. So he does want to help the individual, but at the end of the day, if it comes to it, if push comes to shove, you shouldn't go to shul. Never. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Then that's how it is. He'll sacrifice himself for the good of the public, and that's the way it is, and there's no two ways about it. All right, I'm going to stop my share over here of the sources. So we see here basically that situation, right? As we that the machloket basically about this issue, about, once again, how do we decide on the precedence of one person versus the community? And we see that there's a bit of a machloket here between the Achronim regarding how to factor that in. This brings us back to our topic. So let's start, let's say, with Alzheimer's or dementia, that sort of thing, right? There's a concept, perhaps some of you have heard of it. It's called a different name, cognitive reserve or brain reserve. Basically, the idea is that an active mind deteriorates slower. Okay, and with regards to people who are suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, the idea is that if they remain within their communities, remain active within their communities, continue going to shul, continue seeing friends, that the progression of what they're going through will be slowed significantly. There are different research that supports this understanding. So therefore, to allow someone to come to shul when he's in the first stages, right, is going to help him hopefully maintain lucidity and functionality, for a longer time. Okay, that's at least what we're hoping and what we assume. Okay, as a result of that, it's not just about coming to shul, right, for such an individual. I hope you understand that it's much more than that. It's about also slowing the progression of whatever they're going through, which we want to certainly help out as much as possible. Of course, as the dementia progresses, the individual might be more and more of his behavior might become more and more erratic, and therefore his participation in shul might become more and more problematic. And that's where the posek needs to understand what to do. Excuse me while I just move for a moment. That's where the posek needs to understand what's best to do in the situation that they find. Now, of course, it's not just an issue of psak; it's also an issue of community relations, right? The posek needs to be sensitive to the needs of the community, and of course, sensitive to the needs of the individual that at the moment needs the help. And the posek, the Rav, needs to, of course, educate or lead the community in that sense, to be understanding and forgiving towards this situation, which is not always easy. Not everyone will agree with the decision that the Rav makes, but hopefully we can all be sensitive to the needs of these individuals as they come up. Of course, there will be a red line, right? So let's say poskim that I discussed this with, okay? Poskim like, poskim has asked this question, right? They were very understanding towards this situation, definitely wanted to incorporate the individual within the community. For example, I remember that when I spoke to Rav Herschel Schachter, for example, he was definitely understanding towards that and wanted, of course, to incorporate as much as possible the individuals in shul. And he said similar things to what we saw, which is that we should, find a way for them to come and sit in shul, but not to be a nuisance, so to speak, with the way that they behave. So you put them in the back, you put them on the side, et cetera, et cetera. And that way, it's also good for them. Why is it also good for them? Because in that way, we're able to also spare them the indignity that sometimes could happen to someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, right? When they have, some sort of episode, et cetera. We don't want them to, feel undignified, even if they don't even realize that that things are undignified for them. Doesn't matter. We want to make sure that their dignity is preserved as much as possible. So, therefore, as much as possible, we like to take them to shul. I also heard the same thing from a Mordechai Willig, to take them to shul, to bring them there, to have them sit down, be involved, to the best of our ability. Of course, there will come a time where that's not possible anymore, where the outbreaks are too, too prevalent all the time, that they happen often, that the course of the davening cannot go on normally. Obviously, in those situations, we're going to have to say to the person, look, maybe we can have a minyan at your house, that sort of thing, try and accommodate other ways, but coming to shul will not be an option anymore at that point. So that's an example, right? Another example, which I mentioned before, is I mentioned ADHD as well, right? So someone with ADHD, I had, I think, 2 questions on this, okay, regarding someone with ADHD. The first one was regarding, excuse me, was regarding using, let's say walking during davening, okay, walking during davening. So I had a question on that. Someone can't stand still, right, in one place. So what are they doing for Shmoneh Esrei? So the truth is that mental health professionals that I spoke to said that Shmoneh Esrei would not be such an issue, because someone with ADHD would just daven really quickly. They wouldn't have the time to kind of like put into it anyway. What they would do to solve that problem for themselves, probably just daven really quickly and get through it, and that's it. But for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they did feel that that was a concern, because the davening there sometimes is very long. Shmoneh Esrei, right? That we daven, the Amida is very, very long. So what would happen in that situation? Could an individual walk around in that situation? So here we have exactly the kind of case that the poskim discuss, right? Because on the one hand, telling them to walk around is okay halachically. We can do that. Okay, it's not the end of the world for them to walk around during the Amida, in terms of the laws of the Amida themselves, especially if they help the kavana rather than hurt the kavana. So suppose it should be fine. But what about the shul, right? Imagine people are all standing, davening with kavana, the Amida, Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Kippur. It's only this kid is like walking around everywhere. So what are we going to do with that, right? So we have to make sure to balance the needs of the individual with the needs of the community. So we can seat such an individual, let's say, on the side or in the back. And if he wants to like walk around a little bit around that area, right? So that would solve the issue, God willing. Yeah, it would solve the issue. It would help us to deal with it. And then we don't have to worry as much. We can incorporate them in the davening, right? Handle the needs. And the chash'ata the chak gdola mizo, right? You could say. And therefore you have to make sure that the person is involved in the tefillah of the Yamim Noraim. You don't want to, push a kid out and say, you have no room here with us, etc. But once again, to conserve the needs of the community as well. One last example, and then I will happy to open up for questions or comments as people want to ask. The last thing that I was asked, that I saw that was asked, was about using, once again, kids with ADHD. Sometimes they need to fiddle with things. I don't know if you're aware of that, right? That they need to fiddle. There was this thing I called, I don't know if it probably made it to America. Maybe it was in America first and made it to here. I don't know. A spinner, you know what I'm talking about? Those things, it's like hold them, you spin these things, you spin them, right? So a lot of the kids had these like spinner things. Whatever, spinners.
Fidget spinner.
Sorry?
It's called a fidget spinner.
That's it. Okay. It's even
Do you know
called
that
a fidget
there's
spinner.
Rabbi Rosenzweig, do you know there's an incredible conspiracy theory about these things? When they first came out, there were articles in the newspaper that the Israeli government created these things to give them to Palestinians to keep them busy so they wouldn't engage in terror. That's that actually made it into the press. Such a conspiracy theory.
Unbelievable. Yeah. All right. That's funny. Anyway, right. So fidget spinners, fidget cubes I've seen, etc. All these sorts of things, that the kids need. They need to like put something in their hands and, etc. Okay. So do we want kids, right, who are not like 10 years old, talking about 15, say, coming to shul and starting with, they're like little games in their hands, right? So they're like, they need this in order to help. It helps them concentrate, helps them calm down, whatever, etc. These little things, little games. So, usually I would tell a kid, like you shouldn't sit in the main section of the shul with the game in your hand, start playing around. That's not what we would say is the proper, activity in terms of shul, But what about in this situation when it helps them to have kavana? So I actually saw a bit of a machloket, disagreement about this. There's a posek here in Israel, Haredi posek. His name is Rav Yitzhak Zilberstein. I'm not sure how well known he is, although I think he was the
In the
son-in-law
Daf Yomi
of
circles,
Yashiv,
he's well known in the Daf Yomi circles because of his son.
Chashukei Chemed, yeah.
Chashukechem. Yeah.
Right. So there you go. Okay. So yeah, so Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein he has a psak where he says no. He says it's bizayon. It's you can't allow it. It's gonna bring down the level and shul, etc. etc. So better for him to just daven quickly, etc. and then go home or whatever, not to involve himself with games and things like that. But I heard differently from Rav Shechter and Rav Willig. They both told me that if it helps the kid to concentrate, then yes, then he can come with these things, sit in shul. Better that he sits in shul, he doesn't sit in shul. And that they also told me that, of course, once again, it's best not to position such a child, such an individual, right in the center of the shul where everyone can see what he's doing. You can have a kid who's playing. Of course, we have to incorporate them, but we should also make sure that the shul, the sanctity of the shul, the kedusha of the shul is maintained. So it's best to put such an individual on the side, maybe in the back, something along those lines. And of course, definitely better to have them than not to have them. So these are some of the dilemmas that we have when trying to incorporate the needs of the individual with the needs of the shul, of the public. And I am happy to hear any comments or questions now that there are.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosenzweig. Those were very fascinating sources. Okay, so we have the chat open and the raise hand function is available. Would anyone care? I'm going to unmute folks as well, or at least ask to unmute.
We're guests.
Would anyone like to ask any questions?
It's funny.
I think Stuart has his hand up.
Does he?
Hello.
Okay, Stuart, go ahead.
I have a bunch of questions, but if you think I'm monopolizing too much, please let me know, okay? Okay, so my first question is the issue of epilepsy in terms of how the rabbi answered. My concern is in terms of pikuach nefesh. Here's a kid who's having epilepsy.
Right.
So in issues of eating and not eating, I don't think it would be an issue. He should eat. He gets a seizure if he doesn't eat.
So you're saying, of course he should eat.
Yes.
You're saying, oh, I see. You're saying even on Yom Kippur.
I'm saying even on Yom Kippur, if he's having seizures, yeah, I see it as pikuach nefesh.
Okay. I mean, it could very well be that the Khatam Sofer was just not aware of that he wasn't aware of epilepsy being, once again, they did think that it was a mental issue back then, not a physical issue. Okay. So it could be that they weren't aware of the full extent of what epilepsy means for the person.
Okay. So my other question is in terms of mental health. What happens with the Birchat HaKohanim? Is that considered like if you have an injury, if you have a blemish, you can't do Birchat HaKohanim from what I understand. So in terms of mental health, how does that work?
The Torah describes, first of all, the Torah is very clear about what it considers to be a mum, what it doesn't consider to be a mum. The issue of mental health is not mentioned, in other words, in the Torah, and therefore would not be considered part of that. Okay, so therefore it wouldn't be an issue. However, I should mention that the Torah specifically mentions that with regards to the Mikdash, there is a discussion about whether it would apply to Nisiat Kapayim anyway. So even if we would consider it a mum, I'm not sure that for Nisiut Kapayim in the Gvulim, meaning in our communities, that the mum would be considered a problem. There is some discussion about it, especially for someone who's what's called Dash Be'iro, someone who is well known, meaning his mumim are well known. Many people say that that's not an issue if the mumim are well known.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of, I think a lot in terms of the shul policy itself, it's going to depend a lot. Yes, of course, halacha, but it's also going to depend on the patience of the shul. You know,
course.
some shuls will have patience and others won't. I don't even know if patience is the right word, you know, but I think some
Yeah.
shuls will and have
Tolerance.
don't. Like,
Yeah.
there are some people that when they daven, when they come to the end, they tend to speak a little bit louder. And, you know, and I've been at services where someone's told someone to be quiet. And then he, of course, not of course, but he reacts like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. But I think a lot of that, you know, it's going to depend on the shul.
Absolutely. Maybe Rabbi Gelman has what to say about that, but I agree, you know, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there are definitely, you know, some shuls that have a higher tolerance, let's call it, for, let's say, even taking it outside the realm of mental health issues, let's say young children in the shul, right? You'll have a minyan that has a lot of young people in it. And so they may have a higher tolerance towards kids, you know, walking in and out, making a little noise. And so they may also have more tolerance to, you know, we have a young man in our shul who comes every Shabbos. He's a very functional person, but he has a developmental delay, and he speaks loudly when he speaks to people. When the Torah's coming around, he speaks very loudly, but the shul is, you know, very welcoming. But he doesn't really create any type of interruption or any type of issue when, let's say, we're all davening the Amida. He knows what to do. But, you know, there are aspects of his behavior that some people may find a little disturbing, but the shul has, right, really just embraced him and welcomed him. So I think a lot of it is, I think the Dash Bey Rabin point is a conceptual idea too, really, in the sense of so if you have a Hashkama minyan that's only, you know, guys, you know, people who want to just get through the davening, no nonsense, that may be a different issue. I think I'll just end. I think also we have to sensitize people to this, and as we see the tshuvot, that as they get more sensitive to this, we have to sensitize people to the importance of including everyone in shul, and Rav Moshe's point that not only for the person who has epilepsy, who otherwise does not have any issues, you know, this young boy would be devastated if he couldn't come to shul, and so for him it would be a huge issue, along the lines of what Moshe Feinstein was saying. If we would tell him, you know, you can't come, and he wouldn't understand. You could only come if you're quiet. It just wouldn't work. So I think that Dash Bey Rabin issue, that people are familiar and used to it, is a huge conceptual aspect of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we come back to what you've constantly repeated, that even though we do have a diagnosis, every diagnosis is relative, and every, you know, person's an individual. The last comment I want to make is about spinners and ADHD. Sorry, can't help myself. And pretty much, you know, first of all, there aren't really good studies on spinners and ADHD, but also what they found is that with a lot of kids, again, kids are individual, that was more distracting, because they would look at the spinners. Really? Yes, but actually what does tend to possibly work, and again, these are just case studies, it's not studies like, you know, a stress ball or something like that, because he's not actually looking at the ball, he's not looking at it, but he's just using it to stress. So,
right.
Okay, I'm done. I'm sure you're happy to mute me again. So,
no, thank you, Stuart. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I heard someone saying that we're a guest here, so we shouldn't ask a question, but the floor is open to anyone who would like to ask the question, whether you're a UOS member or not. As I like to say, there are only two types of Jews: UOS members and not yet UOS members. So there's still help.
Yeah, I wanted
Wait,
to
hold
ask-
on one second. Uri, hello.
Hi.
I don't think I've seen you since, I think, the fourth floor of Morgue
Wow.
on 185th Street and Amsterdam Avenue or something like that.
Ago.
Yes, nice to see you. Okay, please go ahead, ask your question.
Yocheved.
Please go ahead.
I wanted to know, I saw an article that said address the idea of a seeing eye dog in shul and introduce the factor of kavod habriot, to tell somebody blind, sure, you know, come, but you can't bring your seeing eye dog. You have to be dependent on somebody to bring you, that also should be part of the shikul of the, when you're deciding how to do things. Do you think that that's becoming more recognized, or that just taking a concept and perhaps, you giving it its modern form?
I think that it's a very broad question that you're asking. I think that in general, the answer to your question is a yes. In other words, the concept of kvod habriot, for whatever reason, in different times, at different places, gains more or less traction. I think today we hear that more and more often, that people do mention it and see it. And the dignity of individuals is also more significant. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, Rav Soloveitchik already writes this in Isha Emunah, in The Lonely Man of Faith, where he says that, the dignity of a person, right, who could fly to the moon is different than the dignity of a person who needs to travel by horse and carriage, and reach a place, weeks and weeks and weeks to go from one city to another. And in the same way, I can say that, the dignity that we have, when we have like plumbing and running water is different than the dignity of a person who needed to go into the field, in order to relieve himself. So my point is that kvod habriot is a changing concept. And I think that today we are not only, look with coronavirus, right? Where it's not just about living, it's about quality of life. We all feel very, very strongly, not just about survival, but about thriving, about being able to live a life that is qualitatively a good life, that is a fine life, etc. I'm not saying they never thought about that in the past, but they were more focused on just getting through the day-to-day. And today, because we don't have to do that, the day-to-day is more or less organized for us. We are able to think way, way beyond that. And the concepts of kvod habriot are definitely much more developed today than they were even during Moshe Feinstein's time, but certainly in Moshe Feinstein's time, more than before.
Thanks.
Thank you, Yocheved. Okay. Anybody else? I'm looking on the chat. I don't see any questions on the chat or on the hands up. I'll just look on the screen. Is anyone physically raising their hand that has a question? No? Okay. Well, it's just about our time anyway to say goodbye. So I will thank you all very much for joining. Thank you, Rabbi Rosenzweig, for this wonderful class. I'll just will remind everyone that we have one more class. Here's the flyer. Next week, same time, same channel. How can Halacha help battle the stigma of mental illness? That'll be the final class. I want to again thank Avi and Tali Tesler for sponsoring the class in memory of Dr. Eli Simon. And I want to thank Dr. Simon's family members for joining so far both times. It's really a wonderful tribute, and we made a wonderful connection, the Rabinovich connection, which was wonderful. So thank you. We'll sign off. Have a wonderful week, everyone. An early Shabbat Shalom to you all, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much.